Okay, we're going to go ahead and do chapter 10. I'm going to walk through some of the steps here, and hopefully this will get you guys headed on the right track. If you're having some problems, go ahead and open the file. It needs to be upgraded. Some of the links that are involved in this file won't necessarily work, the site and the structure. For this particular project, we don't care. We're just going to let that load anyway. Alright, so what we start with here, we've got this gray box and we've got this set of windows down here. There's a few steps we want to do to get up to page 345. And the first thing that the book has us go through is create a new wall type. I'm going to go ahead and start by going to level 1, and I'm going to create my new wall type here. I want to select the exterior walls to this project. One way to do that is to do the chain select. So I'm going to hover, tab, click. They don't want me to change this back wall, so I'm going to unselect that. I'm going to hold shift and unselect that. Now I have these 5 walls selected. Those are the ones we want to deal with. And what I'll do here, edit type, and I'm going to click duplicate, and we're supposed to name this exterior shell. That's a pretty common term to use for the outside of the building. And then we're going to build a wall. The wall shows up on page 424, exactly how it's supposed to be. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We're going to insert a couple more layers. We're going to have 3 total layers when we're done. 2 of these are going to be outside the building, outside the core, that is. And remember, when we drew these lines for the walls, they were the exterior core, and so these layers are going to obey that same location line when we're done. We're going to add the surfaces appropriately based on where that location line was. If you don't remember what I'm talking about, this is pretty crucial. It makes a big difference when we were working on stairs in the previous units. We sort of skipped those this summer or this spring because of the COVID problem, but if you wanted to go back and do those exercises, you have to pay real close attention to those alignment lines. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and fix these up just like they are on page 424. And this is supposed to be brick. So I'm going to click on this. And the book has a material called Brick Common. We don't have access to that exact same material, so I'm just going to choose a brick. I don't really care right now which one it is. It's mostly just trying to get us to talk about the differences. And so I'm going to use brick masonry like this. It's going to give me a pattern like that when it's in black and white. And then air infiltration barrier here. We leave the other one, we're going to call it concrete masonry units. And click in here and type in concrete. And we're going to see concrete masonry units somewhere on this list. Concrete. Cast in place, lightweight, precast, glass fiber, fiber masonry, masonry concrete units. That's the one we want. Give us that pattern. And when this diagonal crosshatch is appropriate for CMU and plan. Okay, so that gives us these. Now the thicknesses are all currently incorrect also, so I'm going to have to type these in. I'm going to type 0, 3, 5/8. Air infiltration can stay 0, and then this one's not 1, it's going to be, and we click OK to that. Oh, I'm sorry. That one, the membrane layers can be 0. Air infiltration barrier is 2 inches thick. Okay, and this gives us a little wall section like this. Now the next thing the book goes into a long discussion about materials, and the materials browsers are very common for all sorts of softwares. In fact, the materials browser here is shared with AutoCAD. I asked you to skip that section because some of the instructions in there predate this particular version of Revit that I'm working on, and so they're constantly manipulating things, and some of the stuff they're talking about there just doesn't quite work the same way. So I'm going to skip over to 428, adding walls and returns. And what we want to do is we want to achieve a wall. You can see what the wall that we want to achieve looks like on page 430. And I'm going to make some modifications to make that happen here. So the way this works is I want to go back onto the structure, and I don't want the finish to wrap. I don't want the thermal barrier to wrap. And then I want to create returns on both ends. So it says at inserts, I want to say on the interior surface is going to return, and at the ends, the interior surface is going to return. And when I click OK to that, oops, that was supposed to do it. Let's see. It was supposed to be the exterior surface. It's the brick that I want to go around. Exterior and exterior. And see, that's what we're supposed to see. So the brick covers up that air gap and goes over the edge. And then that's the way we want these walls to appear. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK to that. I'm going to click OK to that again. We don't see anything happening yet with that. But what we're going to do in just a second is we're going to trim this wall out, and then we're going to notice how that affects things. So that's my next step. And I'm skipping around a little bit in the book, trying to streamline the video for you guys, but I want to trim this wall. So I'm going to do split, and there's this cool little button right here. It says delete the inner segment. So it understands, like, used to be one long wall. I've cut it in a couple places, and it's going to delete the interior piece. So I'm just going to cut it, and I'm actually going to kind of zoom in and get it as close as I can to that edge. Bink. And I cut that one, and then I come over here and I look at that edge of concrete, cut it right there, and it's going to delete that interior portion for me also. So that's great. Now what I want to do is draw two new walls that come in here and bend back just a little bit. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to select the wall. There's this handy tool here called Create Similar. You can type CS, and I'm going to click that wall once on this corner, and then I'm going to come back just like that. Okay, I'm going to do that on both ends. Click this corner and then come right back here. Now you notice it's drawn it the wrong way, so I'm going to hit spacebar, flip it over, and go like that. And it's going to line up the exterior face of finish. Now we don't see that cool little return yet because I don't have the detail level up, but when I do this and I say medium, we're going to see how that works. If I want to see it in color, we can do that real quickly. I can just say, hey, show me the shaded view. We can see the brick now wraps around the structure. Okay? So that's sort of our first little milestone for this chapter. All right, picking up on page 431, I'm going to create a couple of new walls. I'm going to go to the Architecture tab. I'm going to say wall. And what I want to do here is draw a curtain wall. So scroll all the way down to the bottom of this list. Now you need to read this stuff about working with curtain walls and wall system families on page 430. It's going to explain what's happening, but I'm going to show you the clicks. And I'm going to click a curtain wall system, curtain wall 1. I'm going to zoom in on here, and I want to click a point on this wall, and then I'm going to come across all the way to the other side. Just panning across, and I'm going to click on this wall. Okay. Now there's two things that just happened. It drew the wall, but it also joined the wall. And the way the curtain wall systems work, if it's joined, it's not going to do all the tricks we want it to do. So I need to right-click on this dot and say disallow join. I'm going to do it on the right and on the left. Right-click on this dot. Disallow join. Okay, so what's happened there is now this wall actually ends right at that location. It doesn't try to tie into this one. Okay. The other thing I want to do is move it back a little bit. So right now you can see it's measuring 7 and 3/8. I'm going to change this to say 4 inches. Okay, so that it's kind of set back. That's pretty good. The one thing about it is that the walls are actually intersecting these columns. We're going to come back and fix that later. Okay, so that's the first little portion to getting this thing done. There are no columns in this because, like I said before, if we look at our managed links, the structure is not loaded. You could load it in. It's in the folder. If you want to bring it in, load it in. You will get a little error message. You can ignore that for the time being. But right now, yeah, the structure of the site, they're not loaded. Okay, so that's the next little piece of this. I'm going to go ahead and save that file, and then that'll be, you know, I can't go backwards from that point. That's the point we're at. So now, the next thing we want to do after we create that curtain wall is set up a view, and then we're gonna. That'll be where I want you to save. Is at 435, and then once you're to that point, you can move forward and start adding the grids. But I want to save this view. So you'll notice there is this enlarged plan view, and if I click on that, it's going to take me to a cropped region of the plan. The way they built that was to go up here to the View tab, and they created a call out. Okay, so now we're inside that call out. Now there's a few things going on in this call out. They've built some ramps and stairs. That was from latter half of chapter 8, I believe, or chapter 7. And they did all this vertical circulation. We skipped that. It's a great exercise. You can always go back and work on it. But right now what I want to do is create a view that's dedicated for this piece of curtain wall system. So I'm going to create a section. It's kind of a tricky way to do this, but I'm just going to create a section across there. Now you're going to notice that that section goes all the way back through the building. I don't need all of that. I only need it to be to just inside that surface of glass. I just need a tiny little sliver of the building. And so I'm going to move this up even so that I don't have any other pieces in my way. I'm going to pull this down so that it's really just framing that curtain wall just pretty much as snugly as possible. I want to make sure I can see the corner of the brick and then the curtain wall, and that's it. Okay, now when I open that section, watch what's going to happen. It's going to show me the whole height of the building. Well, again, I only need to see the first level. The curtain wall is down here somewhere. So I'm going to take this height of the building and reduce it to only show the area between level 1 and 2. Okay, I don't even need to see all this stuff at the bottom. I really just need to be able to focus in on that curtain wall, and I can't quite select it right in this view, but because it's hiding behind some other stuff. But it's in there somewhere. If I was to filter this, I could see the curtain walls. Apply. Okay, so there's a curtain wall in there. So that's the only thing I want to get. Okay, so let's take a look at this in 3D and see what we got. Okay, so first thing is I can see there's where'd my curtain wall go? There it is. There's my curtain wall. Okay, and I can also see these are those little walls I drew. They're not quite tall enough, so I'm going to go ahead and select them both. I held down Control, selected both of them, and I want them to go from level 1 all the way up to the roof plus 4 feet, so that they match the walls that are near them. And you can see now those are tall enough. Okay, so this is a view we want to have, but we only want to focus on part of the information here. And so in order to see just that one piece, I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to say orient to a view, sections, and I'm going to orient to section 1. Once we've done that, we want to rename that. So I'm going to select here, rename, and this is going to be the entry curtain wall 3D. This is a 3D view. I can rotate it a little bit, and we can see that that's the 3D view of this object. And we've got some of the walls cut open, so we actually see the cut mark, and then some of it is visible, and we see the front of the brick here at the corners. There's one more thing we want to do to this, which is to hide this element. So you're going to grab it. That's that curtain system that goes up over the front of the building, and it's in our way right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it, right click, and I'm going to say hide in view element. Okay, And this is where we end on page 435. That's where everybody should be. If you want to look at it a little differently, you can turn on shaded and you can see where that curtain system is. This is the one we're going to be working with for the rest of the class. Now, notice that my curtain wall system is a little taller than my cut, and part of that is because the top offset is at 4 feet above, so I'm going to change that to 0. That should bring it down inside the cut mark, so there we go. And that's what we should be starting with on page 435 when it says add grids. That's the next step. Alright, that gets you moving. I will have another video for you soon.